When my ex stood up in court and said, "She's mentally unstable. She neglects our daughter," I stopped breathing. The judge leaned forward. The lawyer nodded. My heart dropped. I felt like the ground had opened beneath me. My throat was dry, my hands were shaking, but I couldn't say anything. I had rehearsed what I'd say 1,000 times, but in that moment, with everyone staring, it felt like their minds were already made up. Griffin stood there in his tailored suit, smooth as ever. He even glanced back at me with that smug look he always used to give when he knew he was winning. He looked so calm, so in control, like he had nothing to lose. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to shout the truth. But nothing came out. I could see Maya sitting on the bench just a few feet behind me, my little girl, only 6 years old, but wide-eyed and watching everything. She clutched her stuffed rabbit, the one she named Oliver, like it was her shield. I felt like I had failed her. I was supposed to be her protector, and now the court was being convinced that I was the danger. The judge started to speak. She was about to make a ruling. My ears were ringing. I couldn't even hear the words. All I could think was, he's going to take her from me. Then I heard a small voice, clear, strong. "Your Honor," Maya said. Everyone turned. My head snapped around. She was standing, just barely taller than the bench, holding Oliver in one hand and something clutched tightly in the other. "Your Honor, Mom doesn't know I have this video from Dad's computer, but you should see it." Time stopped. Even Griffin turned pale. His lips parted, like he didn't understand what was happening. I blinked at Maya, frozen, trying to process what she had just said. The courtroom was dead silent. The judge looked at her, surprised but composed. "You have what?" she asked gently. Maya looked at me, then back at the judge. Her hand was shaking, but her voice wasn't. "I found it a few days ago when I was using Dad's laptop. I saved it. I didn't want to tell anyone unless I had to, but now I think you really need to see it." She stepped forward and held out what she had in her hand, a small pink flash drive, one I had never seen before. The judge nodded to the bailiff. Griffin tried to speak. "That's private property. She doesn't even know what she's talking about." But the judge held up her hand. "Let's see what's on it first." I stared at Maya, my brave, incredible daughter. I still didn't know what was on that drive, but something in me, some deep instinct, knew this wasn't just a child's imagination. Something real was coming, something that could change everything. I finally took a breath, and for the first time that day, I started to believe we might not be powerless after all, because Maya stood up, because she believed in the truth, and because sometimes even a 6-year-old can hold the key to justice when no one else is listening. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman sitting alone in a courtroom fighting just to keep her child. I used to believe that if you loved your kid, if you gave them everything you had, that would be enough. But love doesn't always show up well on legal paper. My name is Selene Cruz. I'm 32, a single mom, and until recently, I worked 2 part-time jobs just to keep the lights on and food in the fridge. I never had a fancy career or a big house. But my daughter Maya had bedtime stories every night, a warm coat in the winter, and a mom who never missed a parent-teacher meeting. Griffin, my ex-husband, lives on the other side of the city in a gated neighborhood. He owns a real estate firm that does well, and he makes sure everyone knows it. When we first met, I was in my early 20s and thought confidence meant kindness. It took me years to figure out the difference. Our marriage started like a dream and ended like a prison. He didn't hit. He didn't scream in public. But in private, it was constant gaslighting, constant control. He criticized my cooking, my clothes, my parenting. He read my text messages, questioned me when I stayed late at work, rolled his eyes every time I cried. When I gave birth to Maya, I had postpartum depression so severe I could barely get out of bed. He told me I was broken. He said I was weak, ungrateful, a failure. I left when Maya was 4. It took everything I had. I packed 1 suitcase and moved into a run-down apartment with peeling paint and a leaky faucet. But it felt like freedom. I got a job at a dental clinic as a receptionist during the day, and I cleaned offices at night. My sister Lana helped watch Maya whenever I was working late. My mom, Maribel, who lives in Florida, called me every day with encouragement, sometimes just to remind me to eat. They were my lifelines. Griffin got visitation rights. At first, I tried to make it work. I smiled through gritted teeth at exchanges in the parking lot. I told Maya, "Your dad loves you," even when she came back quiet and withdrawn. But something about the way she clung to me afterward told me that whatever he was saying behind closed doors, it wasn't love. Last fall, Griffin filed for full custody. He claimed I was mentally unstable, that I was creating an unsafe environment, that I neglected Maya. It felt like being stabbed with a lie I had no way to disprove. He submitted screenshots of old texts I sent to my sister during my worst days, twisted to make me look unstable. He told the court I left Maya alone at night. That never happened. I always had Lana stay when I worked late, but Griffin knew how to twist the truth just enough to make doubt believable. I hired the best lawyer I could afford, which wasn't much. I gathered school reports, pediatrician notes, even letters from my neighbors saying they'd seen nothing but love in our home. But I knew how this looked. He had the money, the presentation, the narrative. I had only the truth and a tired voice from fighting to survive. The night before the hearing, I sat with Maya at the kitchen table. She drew a picture of us holding hands under a rainbow. I asked her how she felt about tomorrow. She said, "I feel safe with you, Mommy." That's all I want to tell the judge. I hugged her so tightly she squeaked. I didn't know she was already planning something more. That morning, I put on my best blazer, one that didn't quite fit after stress had made me drop weight. I tied my hair back, stood in the mirror, and told myself I could do this. But nothing prepared me for the way Griffin's words would hit when spoken out loud in that courtroom. Mentally unstable, neglectful. The labels echoed. I sat there feeling like the truth didn't matter, like I was already invisible, like no matter how hard I'd fought, he was going to win. But my daughter was watching, and she wasn't going to let that happen. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cold metal. The benches were hard, the air dry, and everything inside felt designed to make people small. I sat beside my lawyer, Miss Jensen, a soft-spoken woman with tired eyes and a no-nonsense voice. She had reviewed every document I gave her, but I could tell even she was nervous. Griffin walked in with his attorney, Mr. Raymond Hill. He was everything I expected. Sharp suit, expensive briefcase, and a look that said he was used to winning. Griffin nodded at him like they were old friends. When he saw me, he didn't smile, but he didn't have to. His silence was smug enough. Maya sat behind me with my sister, Lana. She wore her favorite sunflower dress and had Oliver the stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. Her legs didn't reach the floor, so they swung back and forth slowly. She didn't say much that morning, but she hugged me tightly before we entered the courtroom. I whispered that no matter what, I loved her more than anything in this world. The hearing started, and I felt my hands tremble. My lawyer went first, presenting basic facts. She emphasized that Maya was well cared for, had consistent school attendance, up-to-date medical records, and a stable home life. She submitted character references from Maya's teacher, our neighbor Mrs. Kaufman, and Lana. She pointed out that all claims made by Griffin were unsubstantiated, without police reports or CPS involvement. Then Mr. Hill stood. His voice was calm, measured, but there was an edge to it. He painted me as an emotional liability. He began, "Your Honor, my client is deeply concerned for his daughter's well-being. Ms. Cruz has a documented history of emotional instability. We have text messages showing irrational behavior, inconsistent communication patterns, and indications of neglect." He submitted messages I had sent to Lana during a rough week the year before. In them, I wrote things like, "I can't do this anymore," and "I feel like I'm falling apart." I had been exhausted, anxious, barely sleeping. But those words, stripped of context, made me sound dangerous. Then came the real punch. Ms. Cruz left her daughter alone in the apartment for 4 hours on multiple occasions while working late. We have a witness statement to that effect. I blinked. I turned to my lawyer. That was a lie. Lana had always been there. I never left Maya alone, not once. Ms. Jensen objected. "Your Honor, we dispute the accuracy of that witness and will provide testimony from Ms. Cruz's sister." But the judge didn't look at me. She was already scribbling something on her notepad. My stomach twisted. Griffin sat with his arms folded, cool and collected. He didn't look at me once. He looked at the judge the way he used to look at clients. Charming, agreeable, professional. He had perfected the image of the concerned father, the one who only wanted what's best while making me out to be unstable and unfit. I wanted to shout. I wanted to stand up and tell the truth, but the moment I opened my mouth, my voice cracked. I could feel the weight of every time he told me I was crazy, every time he told me no one would believe me. I had walked into that courtroom with facts, but he had walked in with a performance. When it was my turn to speak, I tried to steady myself. I explained the texts. I explained the nights I worked and that Lana had always been with Maya. I said the accusations were lies meant to discredit me. I told the judge I had never once put my daughter in danger, but my words felt small. Griffin's attorney objected often, forcing pauses, making it feel like I was scrambling. The judge asked few questions. Her face was unreadable. By the end, I could feel the momentum slipping away. Ms. Jensen leaned toward me and whispered that we might need to consider a temporary agreement until we could gather more evidence. I felt the air leave my lungs. Temporary meant Griffin would have full custody until the next hearing. It meant Maya would live with him. It meant I'd see her only with scheduled visits and supervision. After everything I'd done to build her a safe, stable home, that was what it might come to. The judge cleared her throat. She was about to speak. That was when Maya stood up. She didn't ask anyone. She didn't look for permission. She just rose, holding her stuffed rabbit in one hand and something else in the other. A flash drive. Her voice rang through the courtroom, small but certain. Your Honor, Mom doesn't know I have this video from Dad's computer, but you should see it. Everything stopped. At first, no one moved. Maya's voice had pierced through the courtroom like a glass breaking. It was quiet, but it landed with weight. Every head turned. The judge sat back slightly, her eyes focused on my daughter, as if trying to understand what she had just heard. Maya took a step forward. She still held her stuffed rabbit, but her shoulders were squared. In her other hand was a small pink flash drive, the kind we used at home to back up school projects. Your Honor, she said again, this is important. I found it on Daddy's computer. I think it shows something you should know. My heart stopped. I wanted to jump up and go to her, to stop her, to shield her from what was happening, but something in her voice held me still. She wasn't scared, she was steady, strong. The judge looked at Griffin. Mr. Cruz, do you know what this child is referring to? Griffin shifted in his seat. His expression cracked for the first time all day. She's 6 years old. She doesn't know what she's talking about. The judge raised her hand. I wasn't asking you to speak for her. Maya, come forward, please. Maya walked with slow, careful steps toward the bench. She held out the flash drive with both hands like it was sacred. The bailiff came forward and gently took it from her, then walked it to the judge's assistant. There was a computer connected to the courtroom projector. The judge nodded to have the contents played. Griffin stood up. I object to this being entered without prior review. It could be doctored. It's from a personal device. There's no chain of custody. The judge turned to him, firm and calm. You've made several serious accusations today. If your daughter says she has something relevant, I intend to review it. You'll be given a chance to respond after. Griffin sat back down, but he looked unsettled now. He stared at the screen as if trying to remember what might be on that drive. I reached back and took Maya's hand. She leaned into me and whispered, I didn't mean to snoop, Mommy. I just didn't want anyone to lie about you anymore. I squeezed her hand and nodded. I was too full to speak. The screen lit up. The room went silent. The first video clip was a screen recording. Griffin was on a Zoom call with a friend I didn't recognize. He laughed as he spoke. She doesn't even know I still have those texts from when she had that breakdown. I'm telling you, I'm gonna win this. Make her look like she's mentally unfit. It's not even hard. She actually believed I'd settle for joint custody. Laughter on the other end. Griffin grinned, eyes gleaming. Bro, I've been building this for months. I knew the court would eat it up. All I need is one witness to say she left the kid alone once or twice and boom, done. There was no mistaking the voice, no mistaking the intention. The second video was even worse. This time it was grainy home footage, apparently from a security camera or webcam. Maya was sitting at the kitchen table in Griffin's house, quietly coloring. He was in the background on the phone, pacing and shouting. I'm not dealing with this brat right now, he snapped. I don't care what she wants, she's not getting it. She's just like her mother, needy and exhausting. Maya looked down at her paper and flinched at the sound of his voice. She didn't say a word, just kept coloring. That silence hit harder than any scream could have. When the video ended, no one spoke. The judge leaned forward, both hands clasped tightly. She looked first at Griffin, then at me, then at Maya. "Maya, thank you for bringing this to our attention. You were very brave," she said. Maya nodded once and returned to her seat beside Lana. The judge then turned to Mr. Hill. "Would you like to proceed with your custody claim?" Mr. Hill hesitated. "Your Honor, I request a recess." The judge shook her head. "Request denied. I've seen enough for today." Griffin looked like a balloon that had been pricked, airless, stunned. His attorney whispered something urgently, but he didn't respond. I sat frozen, still holding Maya's hand. The judge spoke again. "Effective immediately, I'm suspending Mr. Cruz's custody privileges pending a formal investigation. Temporary full custody is granted to Ms. Cruz. Further visitation will require a court-appointed supervisor." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. It wasn't over, but the tide had turned, all because my daughter had stood up and told the truth. The courtroom was still. Nobody moved. Not the attorneys, not the judge, not even Griffin. The air felt heavier, charged with the kind of tension you only feel in moments that shift the ground under your feet. I sat holding Maya's hand, still unsure if what had just happened was real. The flash drive, the videos, the judge's ruling. It was as if my world had cracked open, but instead of falling apart, light had poured in. Griffin didn't say a word. For the first time since I'd known him, he had no rebuttal, no smug look, no twisting of words. The mask had slipped, and everyone had seen the face beneath it. His attorney tried to speak, tried to salvage something, but the judge waved him off with a firm shake of her head. "This matter is no longer just about custody," she said. "It's about conduct, manipulation, and potential emotional harm to a minor. We will be referring this for further legal review." My lawyer leaned over and whispered, "We won, at least for now." I wasn't thinking about victory. I was watching Maya. She sat calmly next to Lana, Oliver tucked into her lap, her little legs swinging again. She looked lighter somehow, less afraid. She didn't smile, but there was peace in her expression I hadn't seen in months. The judge addressed the room. "I want to commend Maya for her bravery today. It's not easy for a child to speak in this environment. What she shared changed the trajectory of this case and possibly protected her from further harm." She looked directly at me. Her voice softened just enough to feel human again. "Ms. Cruz, I trust you understand how serious this is. You have full temporary custody until further review. Supervised visitation will be arranged through the court. A child psychologist will be assigned to assist Maya during this process. We will reconvene in 30 days for a formal review." I nodded. My voice hadn't returned yet. I was afraid that if I tried to speak, I would cry, and I didn't want to break down here. Not in front of Griffin, not in front of Maya. The judge stood. "This hearing is adjourned." The sound of the gavel striking the bench snapped the room back into motion. Papers shuffled. People stood. Griffin's lawyer began speaking to him in hushed, urgent tones, but Griffin looked straight ahead, his face pale and unreadable. Miss Jensen touched my arm and whispered, "You did everything right. Be proud of that." I thanked her and turned to Lana, who stood with her arms wide open. I hugged her tightly and then knelt in front of Maya. "You were so brave today," I said. "Do you know that?" Maya nodded, serious and calm. "I didn't want them to think you were bad. I knew the truth. I just wanted them to know, too." I kissed her forehead. "You did more than that. You protected both of us." As we walked out of the courthouse, reporters had begun gathering outside. I kept my head down. I didn't want a spotlight. I just wanted to take my daughter home. When we got to the car, Maya climbed into her booster seat and buckled herself in. I slid into the driver's seat and stared ahead for a long moment. I had prepared myself to lose today. I had prepared myself to beg for every hour I could get with my child. I had rehearsed my answers, gathered documents, written letters. But in the end, it was Maya's voice that saved us. That night, after dinner, she curled up beside me on the couch with Oliver. I asked her if she was okay, if she felt scared during the hearing. "A little," she said, "but I felt strong, too." She looked up at me. "I remembered what you told me once, that telling the truth is always the right thing, even when it's hard. I hugged her close. Later, when she was asleep, I stood in her doorway and watched her breathing, peaceful and safe. I thought about how close we came to losing each other, not physically, but in the way trauma can pull people apart, even when they love each other deeply. But today we held on, and today we won something bigger than a custody ruling. We reclaimed our truth. We reclaimed our voices. Maya reminded me of something I had forgotten in all the years of surviving. Courage is not always loud. Sometimes it's a 6-year-old standing in court with a flash drive. The weeks after the hearing moved slowly, like the world was catching its breath. I had gone into that courtroom prepared to lose. Instead, I walked out holding my daughter's hand and something much stronger than a legal win. I walked out with my voice back. Griffin didn't contact us. The court issued a protective order that barred any unsupervised communication while the investigation was underway. He didn't show up to the first scheduled supervised visitation. By the second appointment, his lawyer had requested a postponement, citing mental health concerns and reputational damage. I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt nothing. After all the manipulation, all the gaslighting, all the years of walking on eggshells, I finally understood what it felt like to stand without fear. Maya began sleeping through the night again. She stopped flinching at sudden noises. She started singing in the shower, humming to herself while coloring, reading books out loud in silly voices like she used to. Her drawings filled the refrigerator. Every day I saw pieces of her joy returning. That, more than anything, told me we had done the right thing. One morning, a few weeks later, she sat beside me at breakfast. I was packing her lunch and she was finishing her cereal when she looked up and asked, "Do you think Daddy is mad at me?" I knelt beside her. "No, sweetie. I think Daddy is learning that when people do something wrong, they have to face the truth. That's not your fault. That's something grown-ups are supposed to do." She nodded and went back to eating. That was the moment I realized how heavy the burden had been for her. For a 6-year-old to carry that kind of secret, to feel like the outcome of a courtroom hinged on a video she found, it was more responsibility than any child should ever hold. But somehow, she had held it with grace and strength. I started therapy the week after the hearing. I had spent so long in survival mode that I didn't even know how to feel safe. My therapist told me that trauma doesn't just come from violence, it also comes from silence, from years of not being believed, from doubting your own memory because someone taught you to. She said I had been gaslit so thoroughly that I began shrinking inside my own life. But I wasn't shrinking anymore. I was growing. My relationship with Lana deepened too. She had always been there for me, but I hadn't let her see how broken I felt. Now we talk nearly every night. Sometimes we laugh, sometimes we cry, but we're not pretending anymore. That kind of honesty is healing. About a month after the hearing, I got a call from the judge's clerk. Griffin's legal team had withdrawn their petition for full custody. No further hearings were scheduled. The investigation into his behavior was ongoing, but for now I had full custody of Maya, and there was no sign he would be contesting it again. I stood in my living room holding the phone, stunned. I didn't cheer or jump or cry. I just stood there, breathing, slowly, fully. That night, I made Maya her favorite dinner, chicken nuggets shaped like dinosaurs, mac and cheese, and strawberries with whipped cream. We lit candles just because it felt like a celebration, and when she asked why, I told her, "Because we're safe." Before bed, she brought out a piece of paper from her backpack. It was a drawing she had made at school. The two of us, holding hands, standing in front of a house with sunflowers out front. Above our heads were the words, "Me and Mommy, we're brave." I hugged her so tight she squealed. Then I kissed her forehead and whispered, "You saved us." I'll never forget that. Lying in bed later that night, I stared at the ceiling and thought about everything we had come through. I thought about how close I came to believing I was what Griffin said I was. Unstable, unfit, weak. But the truth had survived, and my daughter had carried it across the finish line. This story isn't just about a courtroom or a custody battle. It's about how easily women are made to question themselves, how quickly truth gets buried under power and presentation. But it's also about resilience, about the quiet strength of a little girl who saw through lies and spoke up when it mattered most. I used to wonder if my voice was enough. Now I know it is, and so is hers. Our story didn't end in that courtroom. That was where it began. If this story moved you, if it made you think about how powerful truth can be, even when spoken by the smallest voice, please take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who might need to hear it today. If you've ever felt unheard, misjudged, or underestimated, I see you. And I hope this reminded you that your voice matters more than you think. Drop a comment below and tell me what part of the story hit you the hardest, or share your own experience. I read every single one. And if you want more true stories that speak to the heart, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you for being here. You're not alone.